Donald O'Callaghan was born on September 10, 1929, in La Crosse, Wisconsin. He began his life of service in the Marine Corps at age 16. His assigned duties included guarding prisoners until the end of World War II. Making a living as an ironworker, he took up boxing and the name Mike while attending college. Mike joined the Air Force to train as an intelligence officer in Alaska, but at the outbreak of war in Korea, he relinquished his officer status and transferred to the Army as a private. Quickly promoted to platoon leader, he won a Bronze Star with Valor, Silver Star, and Purple Heart for bravery in combat. Mike returned a hero, but with a left leg amputated below the knee, which he was determined would never hold him back. With a master's degree from the University of Idaho in 1956, Mike began teaching government, history, and economics at Basic High School in Henderson. One history student, Harry Reid, would later become senator and a lifelong friend. O'Callaghan ran boxing classes at Henderson's Boys Club, where Clark County Juvenile Court released children into his custody, leading to his appointment as Director of Juvenile Court Services. He became active in democratic politics, striving to create an inclusive atmosphere in which a wider diversity of citizens would feel comfortable and take an active part. Governor Sawyer hired O'Callaghan in 1963 to create the Department of Human Resources. He also organized the Job Corps conservation camps in 1964. President Johnson appointed him Regional Director of the Office of Emergency Preparedness, and Mike retained a lifelong interest in the emergency services, supporting President Carter's creation of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA.
And maybe all you need to know about Mike O'Callaghan is a story Harry Reid tells. If you are driving up to Boulder City from Las Vegas, you go up Railroad Pass. And O'Callaghan coached boxing. And the way he'd work them out, they would jog up Railroad Pass. And he had a brand new Buick. And O'Callaghan had one leg. He lost the other leg in mortar fire in serving in the Korean War. And he'd drive behind them in the Buick and he'd say, "Don't slow down because I'm not slowing down." And Reid said we were all scared to death, that he meant it. Well, he was a serious man, serious about his issues. He was a funny man. He had a great sense of humor. And he was the people's politician. That's really what he was. He was one of the people. He was one of the guys.
O'Callaghan ran for office in 1966. He was beat by Republican Edward Fike. In 1970, O'Callaghan ran again. Most thought Fike would be re-elected, but O'Callaghan won the primary and ran in the general as the underdog. His campaign was understated, but he took time to speak directly to people who knew him through his work on the ground. And when elected, Governor Mike always maintained his personal touch. His administration fought hard for the people, an open housing law, and the Nevada Housing Division providing low-cost loans to homeowners. He fought for the Equal Rights Amendment and increased the number of women in senior state positions. He increased funding for special education programs, created a state consumer affairs office and division of aging services, and fought for equal protections of services in all parts of the state. The opening of the Jean Hannah Clark Rehabilitation Center for injured workers in Las Vegas was one of his proudest achievements.
Governor Callahan was the reason why we was brought about being as I guess, activists as we were. He the one promised us, because we helped get him elected by walking door to door, that he would make sure welfare would help us and do the right thing for us. But when he made it to the big house, he forgot about the welfare mothers. He did not help get programs that could help us learn how to train us how to get off welfare and become the economic working people instead of being on welfare.
in a sense, Ruby Duncan was blessed that when she was really starting to push in the 70s, she had one of the two governors in our history who I would say were really committed to civil rights to their bones in a time when that was very important. Grant Sawyer first, and then in the 70s, Mike O'Callaghan, who had worked for Sawyer. He'd been in the welfare department in the state. He'd worked for the Great Society. He'd been a school teacher in World War II. He'd seen the evils of racism and segregation and degradation. He's elected governor in 1970. Now, they didn't always get along. They didn't always agree. I think Mike O'Callaghan certainly wanted to help people. However, at the same time, he's got a whole state government to run. He's got a bunch of constituencies to deal with, and he has to be a politician at the same time that he has a great social conscience. Now, Mike O'Callaghan loved to tell this story of when Ruby Duncan led a group from West Las Vegas, busloads, up to Carson City. And they were going to protest, and they're at the front of the governor's mansion. And O'Callaghan's sitting in his office thinking, what's going on here? And he's ready to have them kicked off the grounds. And he looks down, and his wife is inviting them in for tea and coffee. So he said, I couldn't get rid of Ruby that day.
After serving his 2 terms, O'Callaghan returned to Nevada to work at the Las Vegas Sun, appointed by late publisher Hank Greenspun, adding the Henderson Home News and Boulder City News in 1981. Known as an opinionated columnist with a keen eye on governmental issues, over 20 years he rose to be executive editor and chairman of the board. He was widely admired as a man of integrity. He remained active in politics still, monitoring elections in Nicaragua and northern Iraq with former President Jimmy Carter.
One thing about Mike O'Callaghan that you notice the first time you meet him is that he commands a room. When he walks into a room, he owns it. His personality is large. He was large, a very large figure of a man. And when I talk about Michael O'Callaghan sort of commanding the room, it was his personality, it was his physical size, but it was also the generosity that you could see in his eyes. I mean, his eyes sparkled. He was paying attention to what you were saying. He was giving what you were saying some sort of credence, or he was paying attention to it.
The last time I saw him, I was at lunch with a friend. And we greeted him, and then he was with a couple of people, and we went to our corner. And he had already been there and was eating, so he left first. And we're sitting, and finally looked at the waiter and said, we need the check. And the waiter came over and he said, the gentleman in the corner picked up your check, and being a true gentleman, would not let me tell you until he had left. And it just spoke like banners.
Mike O'Callaghan died in March of 2004 at the age of 74. Several memorials bear his name today. A middle school on the east side of Las Vegas, which opened in 1991. The Federal Hospital at Nellis Air Force Base, northeast of Las Vegas, and a bridge at the Hoover Dam spanning the Colorado River between Nevada and Arizona. It was completed in 2010. In the same year, a not-for-profit charity to assist Nevada cancer patients was established, Orion, the O'Callaghan Resource Integrated Oncology Network Cancer Foundation, in honor of Mike and his wife Carolyn, both who had survived cancer. Compassionate, hardworking, and generous as a lifelong public servant and philanthropist, Mike O'Callaghan left a lasting legacy.